It is member-supported Hawaii Public Radio and all things considered. I'm Dave Lawrence, and a very special engagement that we've got happening in the Honolulu area tonight through Sunday at the Blue Note. Herb Alpert is back, and he's going to be playing a series of shows. I'm actually joined by him now, holding one of his famous instruments, and he's touring behind this Grammy-nominated Human Nature album. Aloha, mahalo, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Dave. Nice to be with you.
It's nice to be with you and welcoming us into his home, no less. And when we think about this, I guess, first of all, congrats. It's a huge thing. We had planned this interview, and then all of a sudden, things happened with this record that, I mean, what does it feel like? A guy who's got a collection of Grammys, I don't think you keep them here in Hawaii, but what did it feel like to have this happen?
Well, it caught me off guard, to tell you the truth. You know, my nephew, Randy Badass Alpert, he manages our group, and he got so excited because he's in Los Angeles, and obviously we're here on the island, and he was so excited when he found the news that I was nominated for a Grammy. It was like 6:15 in the morning. He couldn't contain himself, man. He would have, I don't know what he would have done. So he had to call me 6:15 in the morning, woke me, and I was, pleasantly surprised, of course. But I was shocked. I didn't think I had a chance. I didn't even think about it, to tell you the truth.
How many do you have? 10, 11, 13? What is it?
Well, I have 9 Grammys.
9.
I've been nominated, I think, 14 times.
What a huge, and do you keep them all in a place? Are they all collected on a shelf? Can you describe, because it's radio, can you paint a picture? Where are the Grammys?
Well, I gee whiz, I don't even display them. I just pulled them out in the last few months, and I keep them at the Herb Alpert Foundation now.
Good for you. Well, that's a great thing to do. And with a guy who's done as much as you have, it's probably not the most significant part of your life. But for a lot of artists, no doubt, getting a Grammy is a very big deal. I was trying to. I've done a couple of long form interviews with Herb, the herbivore, as I like to call you. And I was trying to think of things we had not talked about. And one of those was considering the recent 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. We never discussed your tenure as a serviceman. And if you can explain how that happened. And you joined in 52. Was it an obligation or something you wanted to do?
Well, it wasn't in 52. Let's see. I didn't graduate high school until 53. Winter 53, okay. 54, 55. I think I was drafted, and I was didn't know what to expect. So I brought my trumpet with me on the train to Fort Ord. And when I arrived there, I told him, "Look, the only thing I know how to do is play the trumpet. I don't know anything else. I mean, I'm just a trumpet player." And I lied a bit. I said, well, I played with Dizzy Gillespie. I played with Duke Ellington. I played with Harry I laid it on. Anyway, so I that's what they gave me an MO. I forgot what the 0.258 or whatever it was. And I was just a trumpet player. But it was a great experience for me because they sent me, after basic training, they sent me to a band school in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I was like the number 1 trumpet player in Los Angeles and all in my schools. I was always had played first chair, and I thought I was pretty good. I thought this could eventually amount to something. So I was sent to Fort Knox band school, and there were like 11 trumpet players there, and they were all like, they were better than me, man. They were good. They all played higher and faster and louder, and some were, played better jazz. So I came to that realization that if I was ever going to be a professional musician, I had to come up with my own style, my own voice. And that's, I think, the key to becoming an artist, whether you're a musician, an actor, a poet, a writer. I mean, you have to find your own way of doing it. And, like Duke Ellington once said, it ain't what you do, it's the way how you do it.
And you did that while serving the U.S. Army?
Well, no, I had the aha there. I didn't have it there because at that time, I could play a little bit like Louis Armstrong. I could fake it like Harry James and a little bit of Miles Davis. I had, but I came to the realization: who wants to hear that? They've already done it. So when I heard in I think it was around 1957. Les Paul, Mary Ford. I know this is before your time, Dave, but bear with me. They did this record called How High the Moon. Okay. And Les Paul layered his guitar. He played on top of his guitar several times on various tape machines. So I tried doing that with the trumpet, I had two tape machines in my little studio at home, and I came up with this sound, and that was the genesis of the Tijuana brass sound.
Wow. And so much history has come after that, and huge. Where does the USC Trojan Marching Band fit into things?
Well, the only way it fits in, and I realize I don't like to march and play the trumpet at the same time, so that was a short-lived career for me. I had an interesting, time at SC. I was majoring in music, and I don't think I was totally ready to have that at college experience, but I do remember this one teacher I had. She was a little old. I mean, she was probably in her 70s, close to 80.
That's not old.
Well, it's not old anymore for me. Yeah, but her way of teaching was kind of ancient. And I remember one time it was raining, and these drips were dropping on a windowsill, and she would close her eyes and say, "That's 82 to the quarter note." She had the metric reading of these drips on the windowsill. That was my own strong memory of college.
That's incredible. Well, it's these are the things that we didn't talk. And you finished school. Did you get a degree?
No, I didn't get a degree. I was drafted.
And that's ended the school.
Yeah, that ended the school, and I'm glad it did because I wasn't ready for it. I didn't have the passion for it. And that's the one thing, that now that I've been successful and I have the Herb Alpert Foundation, I'm
committed to the education.
Well, I'm committed to the education, but the idea, you have to be passionate about what you're pursuing. If you're going to be a musician or whatever it is, unless you're not totally committed to it, then it's a tough go because there's a lot of people out there that want the same thing you want. And what I tell the kids is, while you're sleeping, the person that wants the same thing you do, they're practicing.
They're up getting at it. That's a good point. So then some of these years seem a little funky in my research, so forgive me, but I know you have an uncredited role in the Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner.
Oh, yeah. I worked on that as a background musician. I didn't play anything, but I was holding instruments, the Aida horn and the timpani. And
you get to go on location to the...
No, it was all done in the Paramount Studios in Los Angeles, and the scene idolizing the golden calf when Moses was coming down from Mount Sinai, that scene I was in, and the camera, believe it or not, sounds like I'm making this up, man. The camera was opening up on my back, and Cecil B. DeMille was up in the boom with the cameraman, and I remember turning around and I looked at him and said, "Mr. DeMille, do you mind if you open up on my face?" And he looked at me and said, "Not this time, kid." Yeah.
Pretty ballsy of you.
Well, but I had nothing.
That's what you got to do.
Had nothing to lose.
Right. That's maybe a little lesson of part of his success. I'm not sure. Any Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner stories that come up? No,
I was just curious. I was pretty young at the time, and it was watching Cecil B. DeMille, who was considered a genius director. It was kind of interesting because he had 5 people around him at all times. There was one guy just standing behind him with a stool, because when he wanted to sit, man, he didn't look behind him. He just would sit, and that stool would be there. Another guy was, handling his clothes. If he took off his jacket, he'd just drop it. And there's 2 other guys that he was just saying, go out and pick up this, that, and the other thing. So,
runners. Yeah,
runners, go-getters. So I don't know. It was interesting. It was an interesting experience because I was there for 3 months, and probably 1 month of that time we were actually working. The other time I was outside with a gang of people, and we were, playing the horses and doing all sorts of things.
Goofing off, right? I guess movies, there's a lot of downtime where they're just not doing anything.
Oh, yeah. Movies is a hurry up and wait routine. So it's, but I was in quite a few movies that they're really interesting just to watch, these great actors that I, used to think about growing up, watching them up close. It was a fun experience.
You had a lot of these. Herb's got this, you could say, a charmed life. He worked hard for it, though, as you can imagine, and he gives back in a huge way. One of the amazing things that you got to be part of, and this is prior to the incredible A&M years, co-writing some songs that were hits, just a couple, but one, Wonderful World, Sam Cooke. You co-wrote with Lou Adler and Sam, from my reading.
Yeah, that's right. Lou Adler is one of my dearest friends. We've been friends for, over 50 years. And actually, we started in the business. I was Lou was married to my ex-wife's girlfriend. That's how Lou and I met. He was working at a clothing store at the time. And I remember he showed me some poetry that he had written, and I put music to the poetry, and we started, making some demo records and took them around. And Lou was one of those, he can knock on any door. I'm more of an introvert, so it's like that's not easy for me to do. But he got us in the doors, and we landed this job. Well, I'll tell you what, we were going to all these publishing companies and record companies playing our demo records for them. One company was Specialty Records, and Sonny Bono was the A&R director of Specialty Records at the time. So we played all our stuff for him, and he looked at it, he says, guys, I think you guys ought to get out of the business. Yeah, he was not real encouraging. Let's see, but then we just got this job at Keen Records, K-E-E-N, and luckily for us, Sam Cooke was the main artist. He had that big record before we arrived, You Send Me, and we became friends with Sam. Sam was a wonderful human being, great artist, great talent, and we wrote a song before Wonderful World called All of My Life that Sam recorded. It was pretty nice, but it didn't really catch on. And then we got together, collaborated with him, and wrote Wonderful World, which was done. This is an odd story, man. This is the truth, though. It was done as a demo. Sam wanted to demo it just to see if it would work. Boom. He had just picked up some musicians, and it wasn't really going to be a professional recording. Anyways, just a demo. Sam listened to it. I don't know what he said at the time, but the company put this record on the shelf. They didn't release this record. And so when Sam left Keen Records and joined RCA and became a big hit, Sam was, had all Dancing the Night Away and whatever, Having a Party, and all those songs were a big hit. The company decided to take that thing that was a demo recording of Wonderful World and put it out. I mean, it became a huge success. I mean, the reason I'm telling this is because who knows what a hit record sounds like, man? Luck has to be in your corner, for one.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that you've said that to many interviewers. Timing is everything, and clearly, because he had been a huge success, they're like, all right, let's raid the vaults. We got anything with this guy's name on it, we'll get it out there. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, exactly. And Sam was he was a terrific artist. I mean, he was really mesmerizing. He was a charismatic type of guy, and he used to come in with tunes in a folder and lyrics, and he'd sometimes come up to me. I don't know if I told you this story before, but it's worth talking about it, because I'd look at these lyrics and I'd think to myself, man, this is really corny. I mean, how did he come up with this stuff? I said, what does the song sound like? I mean, so he picked up his guitar, and all of a sudden, man, it was magic. I mean, those corny lyrics that
made sense.
Made total sense, but his passion, his commitment to what he was doing was so beautiful. And of course, he was the lead singer with the Soulsters, which was one of the number one gospel groups in the country. And so he just had this, he couldn't sing anything if he didn't feel it. Mm-hmm. And after we had You Send Me, and then Lou and I joined the company, and he was doing a follow-up. He was doing I Love You for Sentimental Reasons. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love that one. Right. And the owner of the company was a quasi. He played a little bit of piano, and he could read a little bit of music. So we were listening to the playback after Sam did a couple takes, and his name, I forgot his name now, but he went up to Sam and he says, here in bar 12 and bar 18 and bar 32, you can put in a whoa-whoa and another whoa-whoa over here, because whoa-whoa was full of You Send Me. And I remember Sam looking at him. He says, Jack? His name wasn't Jack. He says, Jack, you just can't put in a whoa-whoa wherever you want, man. You got to feel it. Yeah.
That's good stuff. You got a lot of good stories. And I'm trying to dig stories out of Herb that we have not heard before. What brought you and Jerry together to do A&M?
Well, Lou Adler and I were working for a company in New York called Madison Records, and after we left Keen Records. And we did this record. It was a cover record of Alley Oop, which was a monster in New York, and this company that we gave it to released it, and the guy who was running the promotion for the company, the head promotion man, Ted Fagan, was friends with Jerry, went to school with Jerry, and Ted and I became friends, and we still are friends to this day. But he told me Jerry was going to be out in Los Angeles. He thought it would be a nice coupling if I just met him, because he didn't have any friends in Los Angeles. But Jerry was like working his way as becoming an independent promotion man, and he was really good at it because he's a really sweet guy, honest guy. He's likable,
outgoing,
and he's more of an A personality. I'm like I don't have that type of outgoing stuff, but he did, and we hooked up. We just had a nice time together, and we decided to put out a record. And in 1962, when we put out The Lonely Bull, which was the first record for A&M, there were a lot of little companies floating around, Los Angeles and other parts of the country that didn't have an office. In that period, you could just take a master record up to a radio station. If they happen to like it, the program director, they might put it right on the air, and then you know if you have something. So we had that type of success with when we put out The Lonely Bull. It kind of took off like a rocket ship, and Jerry had the business sense to try to gather all these distributors. We didn't have any distribution, and people were calling us from all over the world, Australia and all parts of Europe. They wanted to distribute the record, so he put all that together, and a lot of the distributors in the United States said, after this thing was a big hit, they said, "Why don't you guys just take the money and run?" They thought, we just got lucky, which we did get lucky. But he says, "Yeah, your proximity to Tijuana, and it's one of those things. It's an instrumental, man. Don't get carried away." But they did want a Lonely Bull album, so we didn't take the money and run. We sunk the money into an album called The Lonely Bull. That became a big hit too. And then I got a letter from a lady in Germany. This was a pivotal moment in my life, because the record was big in Germany, and she sent me this letter and said, "Dear Mr. Alpert, thank you so much for sending me on this vicarious trip to Tijuana." And from that point on, I thought, wow, man, that record was so visual. I have to make visual music. That's what I want to do. I want to make music that takes you someplace. And that's what I've always tried to do, in addition to you wanting to make positive music. I like to make music on the positive side of life. So for me, it makes me feel good. I always felt, I'm sure I've told you this before, that if it's fun for me to play, it's going to be fun for other people to some other people to listen to.
Yeah, you had a lot of good insights, and also when dance people make a song, they come with it with they instinctively know how to make a song that makes people move, and then that can be infectious for the listeners and lead to something being a hit. So there's, I know what you're talking about. And that's the thing with that sound. It's amazing how it is very visual, and it kind of evoked a certain kind of feel, and the music would lend itself to finding a place visually in television too. In addition to some of the things that people know about, there were also TV specials that sort of predated videos. They were visually interpreting the songs that you have. And then an Academy Award-winning animated film, a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. You caught me off guard now. I can't remember their name. It was a husband and wife team, and they made two beautiful animated cartoons.
They were the animators?
Yeah, they were the animators, and it was, something that gratuitous, and we didn't know that was going to happen, but there were so many different offshoots. So, once you get a hit record, all of a sudden doors start flying open for you. When I had the Whipped Cream and Other Delights album, which sold, close to 14 million copies, and then I got a group together. There was no Tijuana brass group prior to the Whipped Cream and Other Delight album. But once that album took off, it was all the major shows. And when we did the Ed Sullivan Show, and we were already selling lots and lots of records. We were rehearsing in the afternoon, on a Sunday afternoon, prior to the show, and Ed called me over and he said, "Herb, I discovered you." I said, "Mr. Sullivan, you're just a little bit late." But he was a good guy. I liked him a lot, and he used to come by A&M now and then when he was in town. But it's funny, man. When that door opens, all sorts of things
come through.
They really come through nicely. And
is that how the dating game arrived?
The dating game came. They liked that song, and so it just happened that it was part of their. I'll tell you, the biggie was when I did Rise in 1979.
General Hospital.
Well, General Hospital put it on the map. I mean, that Luke and Laura sexy scene or whatever they were doing, it really catapulted that record. And it was a different time for radio, as you probably know, Dave. It was a time when disc jockeys could sell records. Right. There was a guy in New York
who would hustle your stuff, you're telling me?
Well, he would, Frankie Crocker. He played it, back to back and hustle it and sell it. I didn't know him from Adam, but he loved the record. And I don't know if we have much of that anymore, if any.
Well, they still have independent record promo. It's apples and oranges. The world is so different compared to then, but there was so much going on behind the scenes back then too, it was such in some cases, such a corrupt business where songs were getting on the radio because PDs were getting Mercedes given to them. I worked in Boston at WBCN, so I was privy to hear quite a few stories of how this sort of thing transacted.
Yeah, there was, greed is, unfortunately, a component, so it's just one of those things.
It does grease the wheel sometimes.
Yeah, nicely,
as they say. Getting into the A&M thing, which we had not really talked about, some of the because that's one of the great things about you is, in addition to yourself, you've got a wealth of stories that relate to the label in some of these cats. So when I think of A&M, the laundry list is huge. So that maybe you don't have a personal story with everybody on the list, but there are some cats you invariably do. We talked about Bert. I know the lovely and talented Lonnie Hall, who so graciously has been hosting us this evening here, came to you by way of Sergio Mendes.
Right, yeah. Jerry Moss and I auditioned Sergio and Brazil 66 in 1966. And I remember walking in the room and I was just thunderstruck by not only the sound of the music, because it was like a nice hybrid of Brazilian and classical and whatever, the pop and American, Brazilian, African, had all sorts of elements. And then to top it off, this lovely voice, was right on top. And that was Lonnie. She was the lead singer. And her voice is on, Mashkinada and all the songs that was, the breakthrough songs for Sergio. And I produced those records, actually.
It's an amazing collaboration, both professionally and personally, because here it is, it's 2016, and they're together, they're performing together. You both look so good. It's just it's a story that I'm sure a lot of people look at and go, how do they do this? Running through some of these other cats, Quincy Jones. Well,
man, Quincy's one of a kind. You could be out of contact with Quincy for a year and you see him and it's like old friends. He's just a lovely guy, so talented. He had, when you think of his resume and the songs that he was involved with, it's staggering. And he knew all the great artists, and he's just a wonderful human being. I'm crazy about him.
I can imagine that you are. Wes Montgomery, Joan Baez, Billy Preston, any of those folks, something come to mind distinctive about your... these are all people who are like on your roster. It's stunning, really.
No, it's amazing. I remember Wes, when I loved his music. Wes didn't read a note of music. He couldn't tell you a C chord, but he was extraordinary, man. He was like a groove machine. His sound was spectacular, and I was doing this show called the Hollywood Palace, and I was the MC, and Wes was on the show, and I couldn't wait for him to show up for the rehearsal because I want to see how in the hell does he get this sound? What is that thing? Wes comes with this little Fender amplifier, man. It was a little small thing. I looked behind, there were cobwebs behind the thing. Man, he plugged it in, and there was that sound, So, the point is, the sound is in the human. You know, it's inside, and I was going to do and I should have followed through on it, and I didn't. But in the '60s, I wanted to do a show and have one trumpet on a stand and have me, Miles, Harry James, Dizzy, Louis Armstrong, and all the people that were Alpert, recognizable sounds, and pick up that same trumpet, man, and it would sound dramatically different each time. So
it would illustrate what you're talking about. It's the person brings it to the instrument.
Well, you know, I ran into a snag playing the trumpet around 1969, where I was going through a divorce and things were not working right for me. So I went to this trumpet teacher in New York. He was called a troubleshooter, and he used to teach brass instruments. He never played trumpet, trombone, or any brass instrument in his lifetime, but he knew how to teach, you know. And one of the things he taught me was, like, he said, "You know that trumpet of yours?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "That's just a piece of plumbing." So when you look at it, it's just a series of pipes. Yeah, it's a piece of plumbing. He says, "You're the instrument. You're the sound."
Oh, there's a lot to that, and I've heard that story about the one trumpet thing. That's aspiration not done, but when we think about the laundry list of folks who were under you, at least you have that to look back on. Billy Preston.
Well, another groove machine. Billy Preston was something special. He was, he did a lot of work with the Beatles as well. So I don't know. He was just, all the artists that we had, when we signed artists, it wasn't trying to find the beat of the week. We were trying to find artists that had something uniquely special to say in their own way, and we would feel like they would finally flag themselves down to the runway. The guy that comes to mind is Cat Stevens. Now, Cat Stevens was an extraordinary artist, man. He would, just himself and a guitar sitting on a stool would just knock you right out, man, because of his passion and his intent and his great songs.
You signed him?
We signed him out of the New York office, but he was...
So you had other cats working for you, and they'd be like, "Herb, I got this guy, you got to hear him, or when are you going to be in New York?" Or how did it work that they'd bring this to your attention?
Well, it happened slowly, because it was just the two of us when we started, and then there were 5, 10, and all of a sudden we had a staff, and then Sam Cooke taught me to close my eyes. Don't be intimidated by what the artist looks like, or if they can dance, or, scare you with their good looks. So I used to, that's how I would audition people, do with my eyes closed. And I remember this one artist we had a hit record, and then the follow-up, she was sure she had something magical that she wanted me to hear. She was recording in the studio. So she asked me to come listen to this song. So I walked in the studio and sat down, closed my eyes on the couch. I said, "Okay, put the song on." So they put the song on, and I remember thinking to myself, "Man, I can't even move my big toe. This is not moving me at all. I don't get it," And so I was like, I want to be very kind to artists, because, just because I ain't receiving it doesn't mean they ain't sending anything. It's just, But I opened my eyes, and all of a sudden I see the artist dancing around the studio with the producer and the engineer. Everybody's having a grand old time, and I'm thinking, like, am I crazy? Anyway.
Am I missing something?
Am I missing something? Right. Yeah, but, it's all personal. You never know. Anyways, we didn't... It wasn't a good record. It wasn't a hit record. We didn't release it. But, boy, in 1968, check this story. I might have told you this, but, masters float around, and people play masters for you, and they say, "You want to release it?" If you want to release it, all of a sudden you put it on your label and distribute it. So I heard this record, and I just didn't like this record at all, man. It was too long. It was out of tune. It was not mixed properly, I thought. And I remember the original record in 1958 by the original writer, I thought was much better. So I passed on it. Well, that turned out to be Louie Louie. And that record was #1, man, for I don't know how many...
The Kingsmen.
Yeah, the Kingsmen, recorded in Seattle. And every time I heard that record on the radio, it didn't drill me, because I didn't like it. I didn't like it then. I didn't like it when I heard it. So.
And you don't like it now?
I might like it a little better now that I'm older.
You know, with some of these, there's a whole bag of British cats that get involved. And was that something where you were just doing like a corporate thing? We're going to distribute. Like, how does Humble Pie arrive in the fold?
Well, they were signed from our office in London, Humble Pie, and then of course Peter Frampton came out of there, and Peter's a really extraordinarily gifted artist. I mean, he's a great guitar player.
He's been on many times with us, done things like this with him. I mean, when you're there, you're doing Frampton Comes Alive. I mean, this is like one of the greatest selling live albums of all time. A lot of fixing and stuff on that, but in terms of its endurance and the Do You Feel Like We Do, I mean, I go into the ABC store in Waikiki to pick up some Half and Half, and they'll have the 13-minute version of that playing in the store. Give me like something behind the scenes when this is, like when it happened, just something that connects to I mean, it's one of the biggest live albums of all time. It came out on your watch.
Yeah, well, I remember seeing that concert where it was recorded. But the key is that even though at that time, Peter was an awfully good-looking kid, and
that helps.
Yeah, it didn't hurt, but the songs were there. Right. The songs were there, and also this guy can play guitar, man. He can play guitar. He's a singer, and he's passionate about what he's doing. It was real. But, to watch that concert and see every time he turned to the left, girls would scream, he turned to the right. It was pretty amazing to watch. But he's a good guy.
Yeah, he had him in the palm of his hand, and that's something that's, I always tell him too, because he's such a scorching guitar player. It's almost, and I'm sure you're probably not a big Kiss fan, but when I was a little kid, I loved Kiss, and I think a lot of adults didn't like them because of their garish image that they had, but yet, if you did a Herb and you just shut your eyes and just listened to the first several records, they had all these great songs. And kind of like the thing with Peter, you think, oh, he's like this pinup guy from 16 magazine or whatever, really handsome, and underneath of it all, he is a monster guitar player, and to this day,
wonderful guy too. I mean, people pull for him. He's the real goods.
Yeah, no, he's definitely the real good. Styx, another one that made a big impact on me growing up. They're Back to America. Is there memories, anything that comes along with the Styx cats being in the fold?
No, I always liked the sound. They came out of Chicago, and I know there was some internal fighting with these guys. They didn't quite see eye to eye with each other, so it was unfortunate because they could have had a longer career, I think, than they actually had, but awfully good group. They had good songs while it lasted, and it was wonderful to see.
Police?
Well, hey, that's a whole other thing. When you're talking about Sting, who I happen to love this guy, man. I think he's a real extraordinary, intelligent, and talented guy. I remember the first time I heard Police at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, and it was just the three of them. It sounded like 10 guys were playing for one. And Sting was, long hair, really good-looking guy, jumping around the stage like he was on a pogo stick, and making this music that was really touching. It was the first time I really got that type of music. It was, I don't know what they called it. It wasn't rock and roll per se, but it was just good,
They were reshaping things, and the sound that was on all those records that you were releasing, it just had you put those records on today, you can just sit there, it's mixed so well. They were very radio friendly too, with that warm sound in a Steely Danish sort of way. It was just like the production was sophisticated.
Well, they just didn't come out of the blue, They had worked Europe prior to their history of having hit records. So they had a whole bevy of people that were ready for them to have a record. And then when Roxanne came out, that was the one that, kind of got the door open for them. But, Sting writes a great song. He writes great hooks, and he's good.
Still a bud to this day?
Pardon me?
Is he still a friend in your...
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy. Love him. Jerry Moss and I invested in his musical, The Last Ship. It was on Broadway. It was very good. Unfortunately, it didn't get the acceptance that I thought it was going to get, but he's a real talent and a really good person.
We had the real privilege. There's a new book by Shep Gordon, Supermensch it's called, and it's filled. It's kind of like talking to you, but it's like the book just filled with stories. And so Shep came over from Maui to do a thing with us in the studio about the book, and so many stories. It's pretty hard to believe. And one of them comes relating to you. It's he because Alice Cooper brings him to Groucho Marx. Groucho is not in the best financial shape, and according to Shep, he started working on him to try to give him some help. One of the projects was an A&M record live at Carnegie Hall. Do you have any interesting Groucho stories or your side of him coming to your label?
Oh yeah, Groucho used to come by the label, came by the studios many times, and he'd bring Milton Berle and all the guys with him. But he was, maybe the tail end of his life. He might have been not quite as sharp as he was in his heyday. And we were at this event, I forgot where it was and what it was for. But I remember I was coming out of the bathroom, and he was going into the bathroom. He said, "He's a kid. I don't care how much money you got. Every now and then you got to go to the bathroom." You know what I mean? He would say something off the wall like that.
Were you the one who signed him to A&M?
No. Jerry's good friends with Shep, and I guess it happened that way. I'm not sure.
And as we bring things in your life up to this, where you're at again, we were talking about Lonnie a little bit, and a title track for Never Say Never Again, 1983 James Bond film. Lonnie did, you produced with Sergio.
Right, produced that with Sergio, and that was a nice experience. I think it worked nicely in the movie. I didn't think the movie was really great, but it was supposedly Sean Connery's last movie, and they brought him back because he said he'd never do a movie again, and all of a sudden, Never Say Never.
I was a huge Roger Moore fan. Which was your favorite Bond?
Well, I like Sean. I mean, I thought he had...
I like him too.
Well, I mean, I thought he kind of establishes the mood of that thing. Yep. And so I liked his attitude. I think it was... there's something about him that... I didn't fall for him, but I liked him.
when you're doing a movie soundtrack thing like that, you don't really get a chance to hook up on the set or see the cats, right? Or did you ever get to run into Sean and your?
No. Oh yes. Well, we did. When the movie came out, there's a premiere in Monaco. We flew to Monaco for the opening, and Lonnie spent a little time with Sean. He was very gracious to Lonnie. It was beautiful to watch. He's a very thoughtful guy. No, that was fun. But I was thinking about, I forgot the year, but I got a call from Burt Bacharach, who wasn't happy with the title song of Casino Royale. I forgot somebody was singing it or something. He called me from London, and he said, "Man, I'm in trouble," or something to that degree. He says, would you do me a favor? Would you put your trumpet on Casino Royale? I said, "Well, let me hear the song. What does it sound like? I can't just play unless I feel it, So he started playing this song and singing it to me over the phone. And he was singing it to me like in a way that I could play the trumpet. He said, he had every little inflection, in his voice. And he sent it to me. I put my trumpet on at RCA Victor and sent it back. And in about 5 days later, man, it was in the movie. It was that quick, and it's really it's really a good song, and it's I think the performance was good, and it all worked. That's one of my favorite records.
Your art is when you go to Herb's site or you do any research, there's a lot of different musicians who are doing art, but these gigantic totems. If you're a fan of any kind of Native American culture, you immediately have some sort of affection for it because you're like, wow, this is super hip, especially the Pacific Northwest. Can you describe how does a person come to start carving and making something of that proportion in terms of an art?
Well, I'm not carving. I'm creating it with wax and then with clay, and then it's poured into bronze. But I've been sculpting for lots of years, and several years ago I was, and not just doing totems, but several years ago I was up in Vancouver. I went to Stanley Gardens, Stanley Clark.
The park, the big park.
Stanley
Park.
Yeah.
The musician screws you up.
Yeah. So, and I saw this amazing display of the totems there, and carved in cedar and all that, and I got inspired by that. So I went home and started fooling around with that concept. And for a while there, I was making totems that were very reflective of that type of energy. And then I thought, why am I doing that? I mean, they've already done that. So let me try to riff on this stuff and see what happens. So I started doing these abstract totems, and I had a lot of pleasure doing it. I mean, that's why I guess it works for me, because I'm not doing it for attention. I'm doing it out of need.
You're doing it in like your yard in Malibu? Where exactly?
Yeah, I have a studio in Malibu, and it's something that just grows out of me. I don't know. I don't really. I'm not. It's hard to explain this, why I do this, but it's out of my control, Dave.
Well, that's how good art should be. It shouldn't be something that's within your control. Kind of like your coffee painting series, or does that have different origins?
No, that has an origin of my daughter Aria. One of my daughters, Aria, she's a very organic person, and she was moving into a new home. And I thought, well, what can I get her that might be interesting? And I thought of maybe I'll do an organic coffee painting, which I did, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and it came out really good. So I just kept doing that, and
you still doing it?
Oh yeah, I'm doing all sorts of things. But I do the coffee paintings, and one of the paintings is in the MoCA, Contemporary Museum in Los Angeles. So it's just been great, man. I just I hate to use that word blessed, overuse that, but I've been very lucky. I get to do the stuff that I really love to do, and I'm doing it for the right reason. It's just stuff that it gives me a lot of pleasure and gives me energy to be able to paint, sculpt, and play the horn. There's 9 sculptures at the Field Museum in Chicago. There's 8 right in front as you walk in. These huge pieces, like from 13 to 17 and a half foot bronze totems. And it's kind of reflective of what's happening inside, because they have an extraordinary display of the original carved totems from the upper Northwest. And the connection, in other words, what my totems do is make that connection between how I was able to do that, in response to what I saw with these other, traditional totems. I wouldn't, if I was just dropped out of another planet, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without seeing what I experienced. So I try to do them. I try to do creative things to make things done in a way that they haven't been done quite that way before. And I think of my music that way. When I play the horn, I don't try to attract attention. I try to, if I can play a song that's familiar and do it in a way that hasn't been done quite that way before, I think it's fun. I mean, I know it's fun for me to do, and it could be fun for others to listen. And that's what human nature is. I took this song that people are very familiar with because Michael Jackson recorded it, and I think it's an interesting recording.
It's infectious. Ever since when I cut the phoner piece with you and stuck that on there from Herb, I had it in my. It was one of those like an earworm. I couldn't get it out of my head.
Yeah, no, it has something, and I got a nice little note from John Bettis, who wrote the lyric to that, and he was all knocked out by it, and that's it's always satisfying when you can do something that the artist appreciates.
Right. Final question. You had when you're talking about the connection with the art, it made me think because I had a question. This guy's done a lot of collaborating. It's a guy you still in a way you're collaborating when you take someone else's song. It could be decades old and you put your own touch on it, and it's a form of collaboration. I doubt that there are any, but are there aspirations of like an artist or a type of thing that you haven't done that you would like to do, a person, a motif? I mean, it's a great time to ask you that too, because clearly when you're recording something now, it's clicking. You did this record, Grammy nominated. So I put that question to you and wonder, it's kind of like, what's next?
Well, about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, I recorded with symphony orchestra and choir. I did a Christmas album that's going to be released in 2017. That is great. I mean, it's really great. It's just something I always wanted to do. There's an album I did with the Tijuana Brass Christmas album. It happens to be number 8 on iTunes at the moment as we speak. But I always wanted to do one with orchestra, full orchestra, and choir, and I did it. I had a great time, and I think people are going to love it.
Well, from your success with the current Human Nature, I've absolutely no doubt, Herb. I just put this idea in your head, and you probably already saw it on my paper there. I think it would be a great idea for you, especially because of the way you're touched with covering people, all classic heavy metal covers. that you do in your own unique style?
Well, I'm a melody guy, and
I'll help you work on the selection.
the melodies have to be there because it's about, to me, it's all about a melody. I think you take a great lyric with a bad melody, and it's going to go no place. You take a so-so lyric with a wonderful melody, it has a great chance.
Well, metal doesn't have a lot of melodies, more riffs. I'm thinking Iron Man, though. That's a good one.
Well,
hey, you never know. It's a seed. I'm planting a seed. Herb might be able to find a... it was just something that when I was thinking about Alice Cooper... Is Alice do you know Alice? Because I know he loves you.
Well, we had dinner with Alice one night with Shep, and yeah, he's a terrific guy.
School's out? Just throwing some things out there.
Well, hey man, you're from a different era than me, and I appreciate that. But I don't know. I always try to do what I can, what's really comfortable for me to do, and that's where I leave it.
And you make it sound so good. Like I said, you made this, and I always loved Michael's version of that song, but it's just been in my head ever since then. So it's great getting to sit down with you. I'm very wishing you a lot of luck on the Grammy going forward and going from a nomination to an actual Grammy award that you can add to the others that you'll put away at the Herb Alpert Foundation and you'll run into when you're over there doing good things. But really looking forward to the weekend of shows that we've got coming up at the Blue Note in Waikiki. Lots of opportunities for folks to come down and see you, relive memories that they have. And I certainly hope that you have enjoyed getting to kick back here and talk as much as I have. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun. You had some good questions. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. Yeah. Folks, come and see us. It's a great show. You won't be disappointed. We'll do a little Tijuana Brass medley, a Brazil 66 medley, and then surrounding that will be all sorts of really surprises that will be very spontaneous.
Any guests in town?
Any guests?
Well, you never know. With your connections, your Rolodex, I would be frightened of who might just show up.
Well, years ago I played with Don Ho. we played at the HIC and one night, and when the international marketplace. Well, I guess it's back together now. Right. Another
a whole new one.
Yeah. Well, Don was there, and I went with my partner Jerry and had a couple drinks, and before you knew it, I was on stage playing "I'll Remember You," the Kuili song.
And you had a classic Hawaiian guy. You had Herb Ota on the label.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and Lou Adler and I were partners. We had Lonnie Kai was one of the artists on Keen. So yeah, I have a little. Of course, Lonnie's real.
Leilani.
Yeah, Leilani is my wife's given name. Her parents loved. I guess it was Harry Owens and. The song they used to do, Sweet Leilani, and they just loved that name, and so Lonnie's official name is Leilani.
Looking forward to seeing her in concert this weekend. Thank you very much for your time, Herb. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Thank you.